When I cover for another coach, what are some typical questions that I ask that other coach? How I take those questions and formulate my sessions. So welcome back to another video. I just wanted to record this real quick as part of a ongoing series that I'm going to start on the channel. So I have a few questions that I always ask, and one is the duration of the practice. That plays a lot into how much time you want to spend on each session and each particular aspect of the training. The second question is how many players are going to be there. Again, that plays a lot because if it's 5 players, you can do a lot of small group work, a lot of touches on the ball. If there's 22 players, then you're looking at a lot of games, full field, a lot of 6-on-6, 11-on-11, so the numbers vary a lot and it has a real impact on your training session. And lastly, if there's anything in particular that the other coach is wanting his players to focus on. And I covered for a lot of coaches last fall, there were specific aspects like a lot of touches on the ball, a lot of fitness, tactical, switching plays. So just having an understanding of where that coach is and what he wants his team to focus on as if he would be at that training session. So for me, the coach that I'm covering tonight, the practice from 6:30 to 8, this is a good hour and a half. He estimates that there will be between 10 to 12 players. And what he wants them to focus on is a lot of touches on the ball and mini games. So I'll have another zoom in, but this is kind of how I set up my session. So this book right here is my practice sessions and all of my sessions in general and ideas that I want to incorporate. For this particular session, I have the date, I have the number of players, I have what specific topic, and I have the practice time. Those are just kind of the 4 bullet points that I always ask whenever I'm asked to cover. I always start off with a rondo because I think that gets the kids in a particular mindset. It allows them to relax a little bit instead of just jumping straight into a practice session. So moving on, we have our first little activity. So a lot of ball work, if we're going to do any kind of fitness, at least for me specifically, I like to incorporate the ball as much as I possibly can. Now, there's some sack training drills you just can't do with the ball. But for the most part, everything you can do with the ball. And that's what I try to get at whenever I develop a session, is never allowing them to go more than like 5-10 minutes without touching a ball. I think that's ridiculous. For the first one, you can see right here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cones, and they are just gonna dribble through with the ball, dribble, sprint to this next cone, pass to the person that's laying off right here, and then that person is gonna pass back, and this person is simply gonna lay off, and the person that was on the farthest cone, he's going to dribble back to the end of the line, and that person takes the new spot. That's going to go on. So these numbers right here are the time that I'm looking to spend on that particular activity before moving on. I have little notes. This one kind of circled is, I was going to do it, but then I kind of changed my mind, and instead I wanted to incorporate this one right here. So this one is a 3-cone setup in an L shape, and this one has 2 progressions. Progression 1 is pass and play back. So the person starting on the middle cone is simply going to check out. This person and this person are going to play a ball. He plays it back, checks in, checks out, plays a ball. Typically what I like to do is have them go for a minute really working, and then they switch out, and then someone hops in, and then someone hops in. So there's a total of 3 minutes per progression. And then moving into progression 2, you have 1 ball. So again, starting from either of the cones, the person in the middle right here checks out. This ball is played in, he receives on his back foot, plays to the person on the other cone. He checks back in, and he checks out, ball's played back to him, receives on his other far foot, and then plays back. And those are the 2 progressions. Again, that is, if each person does 1 minute, that's a total of 6 minutes on this particular exercise. That's 2 minutes of hard work, assuming that they do it right. And again, kind of gives you a little bit of flexibility. If you don't think that is a good performance, or high tempo, you can always make them go another round, and that's only 3 minutes of work per individual. Moving from there, we have a 4 cones, so the progression in the setup from here is simply adding another cone. These are about 10 yards apart, so just adding a 4th cone. So now you have the same L pattern right here, but you have this 1 extra cone, and these are 10 yards apart, starting with the ball from this cone right here, dribbling around the ball, making sharp turns, accelerating in through the space around that cone, accelerating again, and then finishing out, and that's where you recover. That's progression 1. Progression 2, with the ball, you sprint around, making a square, and then you recover. And what I'm planning on doing is having them switch sides, so they're starting off on opposite sides, so they have to get more comfortable turning with the left foot, turning with the right foot, sprinting, and so on. And the recovery for me to juggle, that is a good recovery. So you can get touched on the ball, you get familiar, because when you're fatigued up here, it affects your body because your body's telling you to stop. So that's always a good recovery for 5 minutes, but really I have 5 to 10 minutes, just kind of depending on how they do. And then the third has 3 actual progressions, and this is a possession-based game, so we have a grid probably about 20-25 yards. The first possession is the limit of number of passes, so it's just simple keep away. One team has 5-6 passes and you get 1 point, so on. The next one is you eliminate the number of passes, but now you have 1 to 2 touches. And then the third one are goals with no restrictions. So these are going to be little cone areas where once they get to three or 4 passes, let's say we have 3 passes, so they have to get 3 passes, and then all of these goals become activated, and then they can go through any one of these goals and they get those number of points. Obviously, the smaller the goal is, the more points it is. These will also be color coordinated, so red will always be the 3 points. That's just me. It could be any color. It's just some way to distinguish so kids know which goals are which. And finally, the last one is just free play. That's just games, depending on how many numbers there are, how many goalies there are. That will kind of affect that. And that's typically giving them the opportunity to express themselves, show what kind of creativity they have. Not much input from me, just kind of correcting a few things that I see here and there, but me not being the center of attention, just kind of giving them the freedom to do what they want. That right here is kind of a typical practice session that I will develop. It's nothing too crazy because I'm not their head coach. So again, I don't have a system and a long-term goal of their season of what they're working on specifically. Again, I'm not their coach, so it's a little bit different. So this is why it's not that hard of a practice session. I'm just focusing on 1 or 2 topics. But if kids put their best and 100%, this actually becomes a pretty tiring exercise. A lot of touches on the ball. There are no activities in here that do not have them touching a ball. This one that is circled right here, this was a 2-part, so they would sprint, shuffle, back, and recover. This one is they would sprint in the zigzag, and in the progression would be doing those same movements except with a ball. So that's the natural progression, but I felt like getting more touches on the ball is more essential. So that's why this L pattern shape is what I'm going for tonight. So with that said, that is my practice session for January 23rd, 2020. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. This is something I'm going to be doing regularly just to kind of show you my thought process when it comes to developing these sessions for these kids. See you next time.